Okay, I am here doing Wolf's Hill, and this is going to be part 4 of Wolf's Hill on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And I'm standing here in front of the monument to the 61st Pennsylvania Volunteers. The 61st Pennsylvania Volunteers have the distinct honor of being the extreme right of the Army of the Potomac, as you can read over there on that plaque. And what that means is that the extreme left of the Union Army, which was with Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain all the way back on Little Round Top, extended in the Union position all the way through Cemetery Ridge and wrapped around the barb of Culp's Hill, and then ended here. And over here is the right flank marker for the 61st Pennsylvania Volunteers. So that means that the last man stood in line right here at this right flank. Everything else on beyond was nothing. He was the extreme right of the Army of the Potomac. So we're standing here on a spot in the Gettysburg battlefield where not many people get to visit. Now, a little bit about the 61st Pennsylvania. Of course, we do know their actions that we did on the first couple parts, but the history of the 61st Pennsylvania was in 1861. They were able to recruit about 600 men. They were a Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Indiana County regiment that mustered in about 600 men by December of 1861, which wasn't quite enough. Regiments were about 1,000 men at the time. There was another regiment out of Philadelphia who was a Zouave attired regiment named Birney Zouaves, 23rd Pennsylvania Volunteers, under David Bell Birney. And their regiment had actually recruited 1,500 men. They gave a higher bounty, they had a fancy uniform, and they sold it really well. They were able to recruit about 1,500 men. And early in February of 1862, while these two regiments were down in the Washington, D.C. area, the Birney Zouaves were in a place called Camp Graham, just north of the Capitol. And while there at Camp Graham, there was an order received that Thomas Hewson Neal was going to receive a brigade command, and that he was to take 400 men, or 4 companies L, O, P, and R, of the 23rd Pennsylvania, and take them away and transfer them to the 61st Pennsylvania Volunteers. And of course, the men in L, O, P, and R were distraught. They fought to fight this fight with their hometown Philadelphia regiment, and now they were being put in a regiment that they didn't sign up for. They signed up and had this beautiful Zouave uniform, and now they were going to have to go to the Federal Blue. So there was a lot of disdain between the men in the Army and the command, and many of them threatened to desert. Many of them refused in word that they would go. However, after a bit of time, the 400 men went, and it was a good thing they did, because this regiment fought in almost every major battle of the Civil War. Spotsylvania, 1st Fredericksburg, 2nd Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, the Peninsula Campaign, Cold Harbor, all the bloodbaths of the Civil War, this regiment was at. And it also has the distinct honor of having more Congressional Medal of Honor winners than any other regiment in the Civil War, me being the 61st Pennsylvania. And most of those, about half of those Congressional Medal of Honor winners, were members of L, O, P, and R, who were originally in the 23rd Pennsylvania. So what seemed like a problem in the beginning later out worked toward the men's advantage. And after the wars, the 61st Pennsylvania and 23rd Pennsylvania had reunions and dinners. A lot of the men talked about the disdain they had during that order and how they did not regret it after a time. So this has been part 4 of Wolf's Hill in the 61st Pennsylvania on the extreme right of the Army of the Potomac on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Going to be part 4A of Wolf's Hill on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, and I want to do a basic review of what we win. We're now in front of the 7th Maine Infantry Monument here, and we're going to go through a review of what we did. I drew up a little map, which I'm going to share with everyone right here on the actions that happened here, so you can visually see what I put the video earlier on. Okay, and this map here Let me try to find the right sunlight for it. Try to step behind here on the stone wall. There we go. On this map, you can see Culp's Hill, Powers Hill, Wolf's Hill. You can see the Rock Creek, you can see the Baltimore Pike. Okay, on the morning of July 3rd, from over in this distance here, the Daniel Lady Farm, the 1st North Carolina, some members of the 1st North Carolina and the 2nd Virginia built earthworks. They sent Company D out as skirmishers. At the same time, Thomas Neal, with orders to protect the Baltimore Pike, came off Powers Hill with 2 of his regiments, one of them being the 7th Maine and the other one being the 43rd New York. They advanced to the Baltimore Pike. Then they advanced beyond the Peter Baker farm up to the avenue that we were on today. So right now you have the 7th Maine and the 43rd New York skirmishing with Company D of the 2nd Virginia sharpshooters. He sees the 2nd Virginia, the rest of the 2nd Virginia advancing to join the skirmishers. He goes back and gets 2 more regiments. Those 2 regiments would be the 49th New York, who moved to the left of the Peter Baker farm in the position down there. He got the 61st Pennsylvania, who moved to the right side of the Peter Baker farm to the position where we shot our last video at the top of the hill. And that's where the skirmish went on the remainder of the day, where these 4 regiments, 49th New York, 7th Maine, 43rd New York, and 61st PA, skirmished with some members of the 1st North Carolina, Company D, which was an advanced sharpshooters, and the rest of the 2nd Virginia, in this area here where the clearing is in the distance, which also sits to the southeast side of Rock Creek, which runs this way down the hill. Now, one thing about the 2nd Virginia was, and a myth, is that there's the story of Jenny Wade and Wesley Culp. And the legend is that Wesley Culp, who went and fought for the Confederacy as part of the 2nd Virginia on Stonewall's Brigade, when he returned here, he was killed on July 2nd, 1863, near the farm, on the farm field of Culp, the Culp family. So therefore he was killed on the farm field that he played at as a young man. And the problem with that is that the 2nd Virginia, let me repeat that, the 2nd Virginia never fought on Culp's Hill. They fought on Wolf's Hill. Wesley Culp was killed on Wolf's Hill on July 3rd, 1863, most likely somewhere between this stone wall that we're sitting here and Rock Creek. Anywhere along this field he was killed, and possibly still buried there today. He was not buried, most likely, in the Evergreen Cemetery in the Culp plot. And I think the last thing that was ever mentioned was that they found his gun with his initials carved near a tree. And that probably, because Wolf's Hill's next to Culp's Hill, it might have been thought that it was Culp's Hill. Even Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, advancing the Little Round Top in this area, actually thought that he thought that Wolf's Hill and Little Round Top got him mixed up. So this hill has gotten mixed up in history because there's not a lot of history written on it, and most people don't know what happened here. But most likely, Wesley Culp was killed somewhere between this stone wall and in this wood line here in the distance on July 3rd, 1863, and possibly may be buried somewhere out here on this ground today. This has been Part 4A, Secrets of the Battlefield, the story of Wesley Culp, and an overview of the entire battle and the actions that took place here on Wolf's Hill on July 3rd, 1863, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.